19 years old, alone in a city that promised dreams and delivered nightmares. Before she was a legend, she was just a young girl with a suitcase and a heartbeat full of hope. But one night changed everything. "I was raped at Knifepoint," she would later write. This is the story Madonna tried to survive before she became Madonna. When Madonna Louise Ciccone arrived in New York City in the late 1970s, she wasn't the queen of pop. She was just another face in the crowd, a girl from Michigan chasing art, dance, and freedom. She once said, "New York wasn't everything I thought it would be. It did not welcome me with open arms." She rented small rooms, worked random jobs, and lived with constant fear. The city that would one day chant her name was, in her words, scary, dirty, and full of danger. But even she couldn't imagine how dangerous it would become. It happened during her first year in New York. A man offered to help her get into a building, but once inside, he pulled a knife. He forced her up to the roof, and there, she was raped. "I was dragged up to the roof of a building with a knife in my back," she wrote. After that, her apartment was broken into 3 times, the little she owned stolen. "I had nothing of value after they took my radio the first time," she said. Alone, terrified, humiliated, she told almost no one. She didn't go to the police. She didn't trust them. And in the late 1970s, women like her, poor, unknown, living on the edge, rarely found justice. So she stayed silent. She survived, and she swore that this would not be the end of her story. In the months that followed, Madonna used her body not as a victim, but as a tool for survival. She posed nude for art students, danced for small shows, anything to afford food and rent. "I was defiant," she said. "Hell-bent on surviving, on making it. But it was hard and lonely, and I had to dare myself every day to keep going." That defiance, that need to control her image, her body, her story would later define her entire career. The Madonna we saw in the 1980s, bold, provocative, unstoppable, was born out of trauma. Her rebellion wasn't vanity. It was resistance. It was survival dressed as art. Every performance, every scandal, every scream of defiance, all of it came from the same place. A young woman who refused to be a victim ever again. As years passed, she became a symbol of freedom, of sexuality, of power. But fame didn't erase the pain. It just gave her a platform to turn it into purpose. When she moved to England after marrying Guy Ritchie, she felt like an outsider again. "Just because we speak the same language doesn't mean we speak the same language," she wrote. The media mocked her, labeled her too ambitious, too American, too much. Yet she adapted, learning, rebuilding, evolving once more. And when she decided to adopt a child from Malawi, her life turned into another storm. "I was accused of kidnapping, child trafficking, bribing officials, witchcraft, you name it," she said. Even motherhood, for her, became a battle. But she didn't back down. "I still got the shit kicked out of me," she admitted, "but it didn't hurt as much." Through it all, she endured. The woman who once couldn't speak about her trauma now speaks for millions. She has never played the victim. She doesn't beg for sympathy. Instead, she stands as proof that survival can coexist with strength and pain can live beside power. Behind the makeup, behind the reinventions, behind the countless headlines, is a survivor who learned to build empires from ashes. And that's what makes her story timeless. Because every artist, every dreamer, every young person who's ever been told you're too much, you'll never make it, or you don't belong here, can look at her and see that the scars don't define you. What defines you is what you build after. Madonna's story is not just about fame. It's about resilience, the ability to take the worst of the world and still find a way to create beauty. Maybe that's why she still stands. Because every time the world tried to silence her, she turned the noise into music. Every insult became an anthem. Every wound became a lyric that someone, somewhere, needed to hear. So if you've ever felt broken, unwanted, or unheard, remember this. There's power in your voice, no matter how quiet it sounds today. You don't need the world's permission to rise. You only need your own. Madonna found hers on a rooftop in New York City, a night that could have ended everything, but instead began a legacy. Because survival, when mixed with courage, becomes art. And sometimes, the most powerful stories come from those who had every reason to stay silent, but chose to speak anyway. And maybe that's the real legacy of Madonna, not the records, not the tours, not the controversies, but the courage to keep rewriting her own story, even when the world tried to write it for her. Every era of her life reminds us that transformation isn't weakness, it's survival in motion. To fall, to break, to rebuild again and again, that's what strength truly looks like. She didn't wait for permission to change. She didn't ask for acceptance. She simply became over and over until the world had no choice but to listen. That's why her story still echoes decades later. Because at its core, it's not about fame at all. It's about the human ability to endure, evolve, and turn pain into purpose. You might never sell out stadiums, you might never walk a red carpet, but your struggles, your survival, your voice, they matter just as much. Somewhere, someone needs to hear your story too. Not the perfect version, not the filtered version, the real one, raw, flawed, human. Because truth has a strange kind of beauty. It doesn't shine under spotlights. It glows quietly in the hearts of those brave enough to tell it. And that's where strength is born, not in applause, but in authenticity. Madonna's strength didn't come from fame. It came from the moments she stood alone, with nothing but her will to keep going. We all have those moments. When the noise fades, the lights dim, and all that's left is the question. Who am I when no one's watching? Maybe that's the true price of stardom, learning to love yourself when the world stops clapping. So whoever you are, wherever you are, let this story remind you. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to keep showing up. Because healing isn't loud. It's steady, it's quiet, it's powerful. And in that quiet strength, you'll find something the spotlight could never give peace. Behind every superstar is a human story. Behind every spotlight, a shadow. This was Price of Stardom, the truth behind the fame. If you or someone you know has faced sexual violence, you're not alone. Visit RAIN.org or local survivor networks for help. Subscribe and join us as we uncover more untold stories of strength, silence, and survival.